Ciao, paisanos. Welcome back to Calcio Culture. This is your host, Vos, back for my disease-ridden match week number 2, fully back in the saddle, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Mats. Big birthdays eve for Mats and his twin brother, Nick. Shout out the Bacuzzi boys. Happy birthday, guys.
Thank you. It's obviously Monday as we're recording, but my birthday is tomorrow. Ciao, paisanos. Glad to be back. Glad to be doing this. Very good weekend of games that we had. We're going to review today. So pumped up for today.
100%. Match week number 3 is in the books, and the international break is officially in effect, but not for us. We're still here bringing the Calcio coverage that everybody deserves. We have a lot to unpack today. Match week 3 there was a lot of new developments, I would say, in some of the games that we saw. We're getting a better look at what we can expect from each team, and with each week, we're getting more and more of what the picture is going to look like. The transfer window has come to an end, so maybe we'll be giving you guys a power rankings this week on the back of that. But before that, we've got quick shouts. First one, I'm going to lead it off because we got no logs here. Bringing it over to España, Spain. I forgot the Blanco, Real Madrid.
Los Blancos.
Kylian Mbappe netted his first La Liga goal for the club. I would say now the Mbappe era is officially underway.
Not even, dude. It was a penalty kick that Vinny gave to Mbappe. Like, he still hasn't scored from a run of play. We talked about it all summer long, how we didn't think that these players were going to be able to gel. Yes, they're uber talented, but they all play very similar positions.
No, he scored. He scored.
Oh, he did score?
He
Are you
also
sure?
scored a penalty. Yeah, he
Okay.
also
All right.
scored a
I thought
penalty.
I saw on Twitter that it was like Vinny gave me the
No.
PK, which I was grateful for. But Rodrigo is also starting to bitch to the media because everyone, or just Mbappe and Vinny, are getting coverage, and he's like, "Don't forget about me. I'm good." It's off to a slow start in Madrid. They haven't won, or they won one game in their first 4 or 5 or so. So we'll see if they can turn it around. But I'm not buying into the hype. I'm hoping this is the first year that, or not the first year, but a new Champions League winner this year comes, and it's not Madrid.
Yeah, Rodrigo feeling like he's on the outs is really bad for them because especially in these Champions League runs, he's been a key player every single time. And usually outside of Benzema, the guy that scores late goals that are like, oh, Real Madrid's inevitable. Well, who was actually inevitable was Benzema and Rodrigo in the last like
Yeah,
15 minutes of the game.
I
I'm
guess
still not sold. I'm on
you
the same
could
page as
say
you.
last run, Jude was the one that was doing that at the last. But I
True.
agree, Rodrigo, especially 2 years ago when they were playing City down 2-0 in the 75th minute. Rodrigo scored bang bang, quick 2 goals.
He's a good player. I'm ready to see him leave because he's clearly been shown the door, and they're probably going to bring in like a true 9 next. So I think that the Rodrigo era at Real Madrid is closing very quickly.
It is, but it's also like Vinny and Mbappe. Neither of them want to play on the right.
Yeah,
So
no, I don't know
we
what's.
said it. Yeah,
I still don't love it. This is going to be a thing for a while. In terms of like La Liga play, they always are kind of bad in La Liga for some reason, and
yeah,
just like kind of scrape out 1 or 2 no games. It's very odd. I don't know
yeah.
why it happens, but it's like that every year. But moving on to England, a game that I watched, Manchester United versus Liverpool. Another Real Madrid guy I literally have to highlight here because it was such a bad performance, and I'm sure everybody has seen this online. Casemiro needs to go retire. He was so off the pace of this game. His first touch was bad. His passing was bad. His reading of the game, his fitness. He was the single-handed worst player on the field and was a big part of every goal that went in while he was on the field. It was really terrible. And beyond this whole thing, for you Manchester United fans that might be listening, I'm not sold on Eric Ten Hag anymore. I don't know what he's trying to do. And I don't know where the club goes from here because it's either sack the coach again and start over or stick with him. And I'm not sure he's the guy.
Yeah, a lot to unpack. I mean, United have been they cannot figure it out ever since Sir Alex retired, which has been so long ago at this point. They're on a bunch of different managers. They're a dumpster fire that cannot figure it out, but specifically Casemiro on him. I saw Jamie Carragher said, like, let or leave football before football leaves you. so basically retire. I just think Casemiro made the move the wrong time in his
Yeah.
career. He was older, 31, 32 when he left Madrid. The Premier League is a different style of play. Like Rodri has said before that it's like playing the Premier League compared to La Liga is like a different sport. It's way more fast paced. And Casemiro being old never really was a runner ground coverer type of guy. It's just not the league for him. And then going to a team like United that just cannot figure it out for the longest time doesn't help him either.
Yeah, 100%. Another guy here, bringing it back to Italy, who maybe should have hung up the boots instead of making a move. I I'm gonna say I called this one. I knew this was gonna happen. This guy was not gonna be coming to Italy to play some football, especially living by the lake. And we're talking about Rafael Varane. Little update here, Mats. What's going on?
You did call it. You said he was gonna be eating pasta, drinking wine, fucking off. He got injured in his first game in the Coppa Italia, and since then they just haven't included him in the squad, and they actually didn't even register him for the squad this season. I'm not sure if there's gonna be another window where they can register him later, but we won't even be seeing him in their line and hit the lineup for the time being because Como fully just didn't register him for the team, which is a pretty bold move, I think.
Things getting very scary for Como early. They do not look good. I will continue to say it, and this is going exactly as predicted.
Did they win or tie? What'd they do
No, they
this week?
lost. They lost to Udinese.
Where are they in the table right now? I thought I
19th.
looked 19th. That's all right. They're finding their form. They'll be all right. They'll be all right.
All right, finding their form. Keeping it in Italy. I just want to give a quick shout out here because we haven't talked about him. We've talked about the CBS cast as a whole. I just want to give a shout out to Matteo Bonetti. This is a guy that I absolutely love. When Paramount first took over, I didn't actually know who he was, and I kind of just heard him on some of the he wasn't doing even broadcast yet. He was just doing some of the commentary before it was even taking itself seriously. And he's just so clearly like a fan of the game, but also kind of knows what he's talking about.
Definitely knows what he's
And
talking
it's
about.
so exciting, and he gets so excited when he talks about it. And that's something as much as I love, like, Marco and the rest of the guys, like, Marco is great in his own right. Matteo brings this, like, other sense of excitement that I just love, and he gets everybody so invested in games, and you can see, especially now even on the broadcast, I love that he's doing that because he
Yeah.
gets so excited whenever anything is happening. He
Yeah.
expects a lot from the players, he expects a lot from the fans, and it's like a great added piece that Paramount and CBS has that I would say the Premier League doesn't even have.
Yeah. Mateo's great at his job. I mean, he can do both aspects of it. He could do the halftime breakdown and even the kind of the color commentator guy, which is what you were just saying. And when he does do the color commentating, he does get excited. He obviously knows this league inside and out. He knows all the players. He is very good, a very good communicator with explaining like who these players are, what they're good at, what they're bad at. He's also great at being not very biased. I know he's a Milan fan, but when he does talk about all the teams, he does it in a very unbiased way. He's great. And I'll even shout out CBS as a whole. They really kind of took a step back, saw what they were doing last year and realized, "Hey, we need halftime shows for every single game. We need people to work." I think they probably were listening to Calcio Culture and did get more halftime shows. You very rarely see a game now that's not have a show. However, the halftime show doesn't always talk about the Serie A game that is the halftime show for, so they got to get better at that, but at least there's people there now. Before it was just you just watch the field for 15 minutes.
I'm still gonna say it. Just video us in, and we'll literally do it for free. Just video us in when you guys want to talk about the championship at the halftime of Serie A games. Just shoot us a quick email, DM us on Twitter. We'll literally hop on Twitch and somehow plug into the Paramount system here. We'll do it for free. We're
I
gonna
can
keep,
I
keep
can go
preaching it.
into the studio. I'm close to the studio. I don't know where. I think it's in Stamford. I'm not positive where it is, but I could go. But yeah, we'll do it. We'll talk about the game, and like you said, guy, they're talking about the championship, or they'll talk about players and be like, it's time for them to move on to the Premier League. It's like, no, it's not.
No,
Like
it's not.
one
Yeah.
guy said that about Ederson when they were covering. I think it was before the Atalanta Inter game. It's like, no, it's not time to move on to the Premier League.
5 Champions League spots is all I gotta say. It's time to stay in Italy, if anything.
Big facts.
But to wrap up quick shouts here, we do have a quick Colpi di Luna update. This was probably our best weekend so far. I think statistically our best.
This was a great weekend, and we mentioned on the prior episode how this week was a lot of tough games to pick from, and I do think that this was our best week for the Kobe. Very, very close to hitting all three of our legs, and even the Paisan leg was very close as well.
Yeah, these were I would say so the legs that hit, I had Torino money line. I really sweated that one out until the end, but it was great to see that one hit. Logs absolutely drilled Cagliari Lecce under 2.5. Mons had AC Milan money line. They drew 2-2. And that we're gonna be breaking down that game a lot because that was an interesting one. And then our Paisan leg from Rob tomorrow, draw Lecce Cagliari. I still liked the bet when we saw it and when we took it. Unfortunate, didn't go our way. Lecce went down to 10 men really early in that game with the lead, and I thought that is what made it the lock. Like, oh, they're gonna get one back.
100%, I agree.
Yeah,
I don't know how they didn't score. They were peppering them ever since they were and then they had the man advantage, they just couldn't score. But in more positive news, like you mentioned, you and Lowe's both hit, got on the
on the
board,
board.
officially 1 and 2, or I
Yeah,
believe
one and
now,
two, one and
all
two.
3 of us are 1 and 2. The Paisan League is also 1 and 2, so we're all pretty similar, in standings, which we will be posting a standings of the Paisan legs, or of the Kopi legs and where we're at in terms of record wise and in terms of dollar wise. So you guys can follow that on Instagram and X. And not to mention, obviously, please follow us on Instagram, TikTok, X. I call it Twitter at Calcio Culture FC. Please rate us 5 stars on Apple Music, Spotify, subscribe on YouTube. We're actually Spotify. I believe we're approaching 105 stars. I think we're at
We're almost
93
there.
right now. So 7 more to get to 100. So keep on doing what you guys are doing and supporting us. It really helps us grow, reach more Calcio fans. Subscribe, like, comment, 5 stars, rate, everything, all that.
100%. But that wraps up quick shouts here, guys. But we do want to just add a little Mercado segment here. As we said, the window came to a close. There wasn't a ton of new business, I would say, but there was a couple of really important developments since we last hopped on here. The first one that actually got finalized today, from what or I don't know if it was technically
Yesterday,
today or yesterday, but it kind of came out today. Victor Osimhen. He's leaving Napoli on loan to Galatasaray. And this is a very weird deal. So he's going to Galatasaray on loan. They are not paying any loan fee. They are absorbing his full salary, which I think is 9 or 10 million.
hmm
And I think it's a 1 year loan. It might be a 2 year loan. I'm pretty sure it's 1 year. And what happens is in January, Ozyman's release clause drops to 75 million. And in the loan deal, there is a loan break clause so that if somebody triggers Ozyman's release clause in January, which again has been lowered to 75 million, the loan is then broken and Ozyman can be transferred. And that's done so that Napoli can sell him, which is still the idea, still the goal. From a Galatasaray perspective, this is actually an amazing pickup because they now have the best player in the Turkish Super League by a pretty large margin, and he's probably going to he might net 20 goals before he leaves. Like he's going to be an absolute monster there. From a Napoli perspective, you played a lot of bets here and you've lost. They had a chance to sell him for 120 million a year and a half ago. Now they didn't want to do that. It's just continued to drop. They could have sold them for 80 million this summer to Chelsea. That's now fallen through. And now you're sitting on 75 mil is what is going to get him out of there in January.
a lot of different ways to look at this. I think from an Osimhen standpoint, also a loss because you aren't where you wanted to be, which is the Premier League. He made that so clear that he wanted to go to the Premier League. He even said in an interview before last season ended, "My future's already decided. I know where I'm going." Clearly, that was not true because you were not going to go to Galatasaray or go make this move at the start at the end of last season. From a Napoli perspective, you hit it on the head there. Terrible management of this every which way you look at it. The only thing I will say is I respect how this got done
Mhm.
a little bit after the transfer window from the Serie A was over because the Turkish transfer window was able to go like a day longer or something. And Napoli were just like, "Fuck it, we don't care. You did this. We're not going to register you for our squad." So I respect that from Napoli. And then for another part for Victor Osimhen is you better start off the season
Yeah.
firing because clearly nobody thought you were worth shelling the 80, 85, 70 mil. So if you don't come out firing, it's like you're going to be stuck there for maybe 2 years before you can make that move that you wanted to make to the Premier League.
Yeah, it's a lot of risk on him that he and
He's
again,
betting on himself,
we
which
know
I
he's good. Yeah.
yeah, we know he's good, but I will say this: I've never seen kind of like this type of saga where it's like players teams kind of want him, not really ready to pay for him in terms of a player of this talent at this age. Like he's only 24, 25. He just came off 2 years ago scoring like 28 goals. Last season he scored 20. Like Osimhen is a very, very good talent, and it's like no one really wants him. I've never seen kind of this saga for a player like this before ever.
It is a weird one. I don't know why a deal didn't get done, even with the price tags that were thrown around, but I'm gonna be tuning into some Galatasaray games. I can tell you that much because I think it's gonna be really exciting to see him there. But moving on and wrapping up here, our Mercato. Mott's Napoli signed Billy Gilmore and Scott McTominay from the Premier League. 14 million for Billy Gilmore and 30 million for Scott McTominay. Do you like these ones?
I do, just reinforcing the midfield. Right now, they really only had Zombo and Labaka. I know they only got one game a week, but it's just good to have different legs in there, guys that you can kind of shuffle in and plug and play. Also, these guys coming from the Prem, they run for 90 full minutes, and that's what Conte wants in his players. I also know that Conte's very, very good at because these guys are kind of random guys. You would be like, why are you buying these guys? I think one person would say Conte's just so good at like kind of finding a player that he knows will fit in his system and going after him, whatever it takes, getting him, and then they end up excelling. So I like the moves. I think it will give them depth. I think they'll be good in Conte's system because he wanted them. And yeah, good for Napoli.
Yeah, I think it's good too because Billy Gilmore and Scott McTominay is actually a perfect replacement for Labatka Anguissa, where Billy Gilmore is essentially your Labatka
Yeah.
and McTominay is essentially your Anguissa, and they actually play very similarly. So that from that perspective, it'll be good in practice and it'll be good just like plug and play kind of guys. I'm moving on to Rome. They had a couple pretty big deals that needed to get done here that they figured out. They signed Manu Kone from Borussia Mönchengladbach, who's just going to be another runner in the midfield. I think what we're seeing in the players that they're bringing in between Lefay and like the different guys, this is more the player that De Rossi
Hmm.
wants. And there had been some talks that I had seen. It was on Twitter. They talked about it on the match commentary that he was looking to revamp the midfield, and he had particularly called out guys like Brian Cristante and said we want somebody kind of more dynamic than that. So it's an interesting one to watch. We're all fans of Cristante, but he might get phased out of this pretty quickly with these new bodies that are coming in and kind of the way we were expecting them to want to play.
Yeah, this is a great move. I kinda pair this guy in the bucket that I think about with, Fofana and Thuram. Very young, exciting, midfielder who's a box-to-box guy, gonna get up and down the field, has a lot of energy. Very excited for these 3 guys to be in this league for the next 2 to 5 years. Good move by Roma. Good business.
100%.
17 mil is also a very good price for him.
Another piece that happened at Roma, Chris Smalling has officially departed to Saudi Arabia. Not a ton to comment on there. He was kind of out of the squad last year, and he's an older aging guy. I think it made sense for both parties for this to come to a close. But what they did do, which I think is pretty significant, is replace him with Mario Hermoso from Atletico Madrid. He is a mobile, kind of marauding center back, and he's been a very reliable piece. From what we've seen from Roma so far this year, I think this is a depth center back piece that they did need to add. In case they do want to use a back three, they don't really have the coverage to do that right now. With this, they do. They have a rotating piece for Mancini and Andika. So I think this is a good deadline day, get it done kind of deal for them.
Yeah. This is good free business when you get a player on a free who's been on Atletico, knows the Champions League, knows how to win, never a bad thing. The only thing I am interested in, and I'm not sure if you know this off the top of your head, I believe that he's a right-footed defender, right?
Yeah, yeah, right-footed center back.
Okay, but can he play on the left? Oh no, no. I just looked him up. He's left-footed center back. This makes this signing way better actually because I thought he was right-footed, which what I was just about to say was too many guys on the right still. This guy can play on the left and kind of sub in for Angelino and play an actual center back on the left side. So actually a very good move by Roma here.
Yeah,
And in terms of the Chris Smalling, don't think he'll be missed. Wasn't
no.
really in the squad last year. This guy will be a better, younger version of Chris Smalling.
Yeah, and there's still a lot to unpack with Roma, and we're gonna be breaking that down in a little bit. But to wrap up our Mercado news, this happened, I think, a week or two ago now, but we didn't get a chance to discuss it. Illing Jr. had departed Juventus this summer to Aston Villa as part of the swap deal for Douglas Luiz. He then has since been loaned to Bologna, which is an interesting one. Mats, you've probably watched this guy more than most. Why do you think Bologna wanted him? Do you think he's going to play this year? What is your ceiling on this guy? Because I would say most people probably haven't really seen him play.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say definitely a good move for Bologna. They're not the deepest squad. They have Ndoye that can play on the left and the right. Just adds another player to play there. They're playing in 3 competitions, so they're going to need the depth. He is a good attacking player. He's very skillful on the ball. Sometimes dribbles it too much. That could be the kind of the death of him sometimes, but can also be the reason why he's very, very good because he's really good at taking players on. I think this season will be good for him. He didn't get a whole lot of playing time on Juve, being on a kind of a younger squad than Bologna. He'll get a little bit more burn. Um, so it'll be exciting to see what he brings to Bologna. I think it was a good move for them, just a loan, very cheap option here. And then if he can improve, they can kind of buy him later on the season.
Yeah, I like it a lot too. I'll be tuning in just to keep tabs on him, and I think Bologna need him after this weekend. We'll see what's going on there. But with that, guys, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to get into our match reviews. And we're back, guys, to get into the reviews of match week number 3. There was a lot of interesting developments in this. We saw new school teams, we saw new lineups, we saw heat check. This was a heat check weekend, is what I would say. That's probably
Heat
what
check
sums it
or
up.
maybe a get right weekend for some.
Yeah, for sure. But first game we're gonna start with Atalanta at Inter. This was a game that we had picked out. We thought this was gonna be an absolute war. It was more of an absolute destruction. Atalanta got absolutely
Killed,
smoked
demolished.
4-0. For me, this was the best Inzaghi plan I have ever seen.
You did call. I mean, we didn't. You didn't call the score. You did call exactly what happened in the game, though, and it was that with Atalanta's man-to-man press all the time and Inter's counterattack being so good, it's going to play into Inter's hand, and it was all game long. Just Inter counterattacking Atalanta, doing consistent one-touch passes. Atalanta's defenders were just looking like 8-year-olds running after the ball, and then an Inter player would run through the midfield, like 20-yard gap would be there, and then they'd be on like a 2-on-1 with the goalie. And the worst part was is that at halftime, Gasparini didn't change anything up. It just kept going.
Yeah, and basically what happened here, guys, was 3rd minute, Marcus Thuram, they didn't give him the goal, but essentially was an own goal. Marcus Thuram scored. 10th minute, Barella scores an absolute
Goal of the week.
banger.
Goal of the week, for
Left-footed
sure.
volley from the top of the box, and then game goes on, more of the same. Marcus Thuram then nets his technically a brace, so 4-0. And essentially what happened here was they just had a plan for Atalanta's man-to-man press, and what ended up happening is that this was a new usually Inter, it's like they just plug and play and they just overpower teams. This was the first time I can say they played very differently from what they usually do in terms of even more fluidity. We were talking about it going before this. Basically, what was happening is Atalanta would press man to man. And then what Inter would do is Çalhanoğlu and Barella were the ones that were free to join the back line. And then what was a little bit different is every center back just ran forward. And it just confused the press and everybody just followed their man. And then what happened was there was just this huge gap for the goalkeeper or center back. It was usually Pavard who ended up staying back to just play an easy ball into like a Cherby who was like playing as like the attacking mid. And
Mkhitaryan made a lot of good runs through the middle too, but it was also Thuram and Lautaro were given the freedom to drop in the midfield as
Mhm.
well, so they were really deep down in the field, and then Atalanta center backs stupidly followed them.
Yeah.
So now your 2 center backs are now basically playing center mids, and there's nobody in the middle of the field, and was, Mkhitaryan, Acerbi, Bastoni, DeMarco were shooting that gap all game long. It was really, really poor on Gasperini to not see that at halftime and say, "Hey, let's n no if Lautaro and Thuram come back into the midfield, let them be. Stop following them." I know that's his style, and so it's hard to kinda when you do that already consistently, it's hard to kind of forget it in one game, but he really needed to make a change. But I will say I did look back at the games Inter played Atalanta last season, and they were demolished
Yeah.
again. Like, it was Inter 3-0, Inter 4-1. So I think that Inzaghi just has this Gasperini system figured out.
Yeah. And it's it's more the same. From an Inter perspective, this was a dominant performance, and this again shows they are the standard in Italy, and this is the team you have to beat to say we're making a run. And it doesn't look like from the other results we've seen so far this year that people are catching up yet. This was an absolute dismantling of an Atalanta team that was absolutely firing. They looked like they were going to score, and it was embarrassing. I'm very surprised, as you said, Gasperini didn't change anything at halftime. We were talking about it, and it was just so obvious what the problem was, and
Mhm.
he refused to just switch. They're just come out of the man-to-man system. Like, just don't press. Like, you're getting demolished and being stretched all over the place. So that was very disappointing.
Yeah, Inter this game really showed how not only are they probably the best team or definitely the best team in Italy, but they're one of the best teams in Europe. Like, it was if you didn't watch it, you should watch the highlights. They were one touch passing all around Atalanta. It was very pretty soccer, classic Inzaghi football, just knowing where their players are gonna be, whether it's Bastoni at the left wing or Mkhitaryan playing striker. They were just all out of position, but at the same time balanced and in position, and it just worked.
Yeah, and then I don't think the technical ability can be stressed enough. They looked just so much better from like a skill perspective. Like even a Cherby was like
You
one
can play
touch
like
passing. Like
yeah.
he looked like he was like an attack, like a creative midfielder. It was just you go through the entire team and it looked like a different level team.
Yeah.
From an Atalanta perspective, I'm not all that worried still because this isn't anything new for them. The issues that they ran into, again, are the
Same
ones that we always talk about. They're fine making it because they know they're going to go and beat some other teams to make up for this. What I will say is they need a center back. They need another one, and they're not going to get one until at least January now. But just from like a desire perspective, it's not there for the center backs. Some of these goals were on second balls that nobody just like jumped on and like was
mhm.
trying to clear, like take the risk of taking the foul to save a goal. Nobody was willing to do that. Martin Darun, I'm a huge fan of. But when you have him playing right center back against a counter-attacking Marcus Thuram, like, what do you want him to do? This isn't a guy that's built to defend that. And it's going to be an issue until either Gasperini adjusts something, maybe the new signing comes in and makes a bigger difference than we're even expecting. I don't
That's
know.
what I was gonna say. Maybe they did bring in that guy from Leverkusen, so maybe he will be better. I do. Well, you hit the nail on the head with Darun. You can't play him there. Like, you just can't. And they're so weak at the midfield. But if you look at every other spot, I think Marco said this on the on the pregame. If you just like cover up their center backs and look from midfield to attack, it's a great team. It's
Yeah.
just those center backs that it's a glaring, glaring hole that they did not kind of prepare or fill in when because Scalvini went down.
Yeah. It's, and again, like their ceiling is going to be how many goals they can score. And in this game, Inter really smothered them. They didn't have a lot of really good chances. Retegui had one kind of half chance at the near the beginning of the game.
Yeah, it was barely. That
But
was a
other than
tough to
that, like there
score.
really wasn't a lot. Like
Yeah,
in this was just an example of if you game plan correctly for Gasparini, you can handle it. And to be fair, most people have struggled to do that over the last couple of
Inter,
years.
we also can't forget that Inter have great technical players, like you mentioned, like Lautaro and Thuram up top, with Hakan, Barella, and Mkhitaryan in the midfield. Like I mentioned, they were one touch passing around their entire squad. So much easier said than done to game plan against the Gasperini system. But clearly now we can see Inzaghi has Gasperini figured out. And then the one thing I'll add for Atalanta, where it's like, okay, obviously not the end of the world here. It was Inter at San Siro.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's
fair.
already gonna be tough to win the game, and you definitely could have made it a more respectable game and maybe not let up 4 goals and had a little more desire, like you said, but it was Inter, they were at home, you probably weren't gonna win anyways, but yeah.
And to wrap up here, Bellanova made his full debut, which was good to see. He wasn't the problem. I thought he played well. He did what Bellanova does, nothing new there. But that's a guy we're going to continue to watch, continue to highlight, who can be a real star at Atalanta, we think. But moving over to Rome here, Milan at Lazio.
This was my pick for the Colpi.
2-2 draw, and I have to say this was a not a good watch for a 4-goal game.
Well, even before the breakdown of the game, let's talk about what was headline news. I feel like it came out the day after we recorded. So we obviously recorded Wednesday, and then Thursday, Friday, the news started breaking that Fonseca was just going to fully bench Tio and Liao because of the first 2 performances. I When I saw that report, I thought to myself, Tio deserves to be benched because he looked like he wasn't trying out there. Liao, I didn't know if I agreed with because yes, he wasn't playing that well, but that is just what comes with Liao. He sometimes doesn't look like he tries, and he's your best player by far, and your best attacker. I didn't love that. I understood what he was trying to do. The message he was trying to portray to the team is like, just because you're our best players doesn't mean you can do whatever you want on the field. If you don't listen to like the parameters of which I'm telling you to play, you'll be benched, and that goes for every single person on the team. If I do it for them, I'm going to do it for you. But I thought it clearly didn't work.
Yeah, and it, I would say this has backfired horribly on Fonseca because of what then happened in this game. And what happened, guys, Pavlovic scored an early goal off of a corner kick, which we have seen that he is capable of this. It just hadn't happened yet. Then it got to the second half. Lazio tied it up off of back to back. And within 5 minutes, they had 2 goals. All the goals that AC Milan have scored, it's been the same thing all year. An attack down the left side with not even a full cross, like one of those like half on the ground crosses and a wide open man at the back post. They scored twice in 5 minutes.
And if you listen to the last week's episode of the review game, I said that Milan have let up 4 goals, and every single goal has been counter on the left side with the on the ground or in the air cross to the back post for a goal. And I think that Matteo, or not Matteo,
Marco,
Marco
yeah.
was listening to Calcio Culture because he said almost exactly how I said it. He said
Yeah.
used the words carbon copy as well. That Milan lets up the same exact goal, and they did it again. And this time Calabria wasn't even in. It was Emerson Royale, and he got caught out of position twice.
He
Now,
looked just as bad.
just as bad. He goes too far up, and it's easy to counter. It's
Yeah.
like you guys don't even have a right back. And the fact that you guys only brought in Royale, I don't know who else you can test out there. Maybe you guys should go to a fucking 3-back, but I don't know who you play as the third center back.
We sold him. Pierre Kalulu.
Yeah, a lot of holes. But and so one person I wanted to talk about, again, I talked about him last game for Milan, Pavlovic. Great signing for you guys. I thought he
Mhm.
could have done slightly better on the second goal in terms of defending, but he saved another goal for you guys. Literally was dribbling into the net. He saved it, was all over the field, scored a goal. I said it when you guys bought him. I watched him in the World Cup. He was a beast. This guy's a monster. He has been your one good defender so far in all the games. He's been your one bright spot, I would say. I didn't really see anybody else be too good besides, like you mentioned, Liao. When he subbed in Tio Liao, guess what happened? Goal within a
Well,
minute.
not even that. He subbed in Teo, Leao, and Tammy Abraham in the 70th minute.
And those
72nd minute. The
And
three of them single-handedly break down Lazio starting at the halfway mark. They all just touch the ball together, passing it around, and then it finishes off with Leao scoring. This
yeah,
is a disaster, Fonseca, because then what happens? 5 minutes later, they have the cooling break, right? Like, because it's so hot in Italy right now. Fonseca's calling everybody over. They're huddling. Leao and Teo are just not there. They're on the other side of the pitch, like they're drinking water together, not talking to anybody.
and
This
well,
is terrible.
they showed they were like, that's the reason why you play us. And once
Yeah.
again, I agreed with the TO benching, but you play Liao because he is your best player and he's capable of 1 minute of a game to turn it on its head. And and this is a great thing you guys brought in Tammy because that's what you guys were missing the last games without Morata in is a hold up player. Liao rifled it into Tammy, and Tammy was able to I I originally thought Tammy made a bad touch. It was actually a fantastic
Mhm.
pass back to Liao, who then gave it to Tio, who then gave it to Tammy, who then laid it off. It was a fantastic goal.
Beautiful goal. Yeah.
Beautiful goal. And they were and Fonseca was playing Okafor there, and you could see Okafor wanted to play off the left. That's when I thought he did the best. Like you need a hold up player, which is great that you brought in Tammy because now you at least have two and can sprinkle in Jovic.
Yeah. And unfortunately, we have to spend a little bit of time on Milan here just because of what you just highlighted, Mats. From a tactical perspective, we saw something new from Fonseca. When he benched Leao and benched Teo, he brought on Tarasciano, and then he moved Pulisic off to the left and brought Chukwueze back in.
Chuck Weather was bad.
Chukwueze was no, he was at exactly what I expect from him, which is irrelevance. But what ended up happening then is with Okafor as the striker and Pulisic off the left, what he ended up doing, which at the beginning of the game I thought, okay, like I understand tactically now why you bench these guys, is one of Tarasciano or Pulisic would basically join the midfield to make it either a box or a diamond. And at all times, Fofana would be at the base of that. So then they created this overload in the midfield, and it was relatively effective. And then what would happen is as Pulisic came in, Okafor would then go to the Pulisic spot, which is left wing, and we would essentially be playing without a recognized striker with Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Christian Pulisic as the quote unquote, we'll call them like tens or false nines. That was essentially the area they were occupying. And it worked pretty well. I thought Emerson Royale was very useless. I don't really know what he was instructed to do because he was at times playing in a back three. He didn't really get a lot of chances to go forward. And Chukwueze was largely irrelevant. So I understand why he did this. My issue is that why are you doing this when you're assuming that Alvaro Morata is going to be playing every game? Because he's not going to be Okafor out in the left wing. You aren't going to bench Leao the whole year. So why are you? I don't. And it seems like he just pulled this tactic out this week and said, "Oh, we're going to play like this." So for me, it's still the same thing with Fonseca. What do you want? And I'm not seeing what he wants. And yes, they scored 2 goals. One of them was a corner, and then one of them was Leao brilliance, essentially, with a little bit of Tammy Abraham sizzle sprinkled on there. But the issues are still there. What he did resolve is Fofana at the base was very helpful. And we controlled the game more because we did have that box midfield and just kind of bossed Lazio for a lot of the game, and they just didn't have the ball. But again, no chances were created other than this one. So tune in next week because Fonseca might be running a back three. Like I have no idea, and it's still worrying to me.
Yeah, and I would even say like it's not really the offense that you guys needed to be fixed over the last couple of seasons. It's since you guys won that Scudetto and let like 10 goals in the second half of the season, your defense has been the issue, and he really has came in and made it worse. Probably not improved it at all. So there's a lot to that he needs to figure out, and the Italian press is really giving it to him, deservedly so, because this is Milan's worst start since the 2011-2012 season when you guys let Pirlo go to Juve for free. And it doesn't look like it's going to get any better anytime soon, just based off of what we're seeing. And I'd even throw in one more thing before we switch it to Lazio. Reinders, he needs to play higher up the pitch, but when you have Loftus Cheek, he also needs to play higher up the pitch. So it's just too congested with Reinders, Loftus Cheek, Leao, Pulisic, Okafor. They all kind of want to play in very similar areas of the pitch, and you're not getting the most out of those players.
Yeah, it's I will continue to say it. It's not Reinder's best position and when in buildup. Like he's so good at being like a rotator possession piece in the final third, but in buildup, he just doesn't really add anything. Like he just is safe on the ball, but he doesn't progress it. And
But
he just clearly doesn't know what to do there. Like, so just get him out of there because he's still probably our most creative midfielder. And like, why are we having Pulisic occupy a 10 spot when we have Reinders and Loftus Cheek? Like,
yeah, and Loftus I would say Loftus-Cheek is the same exact thing as Reiner's, like, also not really great in the progressive play when we're trying to get it from our back third to their side of the pitch. They're very similar, and they can go on long runs, they can kinda take their man on, they can score goals, they're a very attacking minded, but when it comes to getting there, they're not the best.
yeah, and that's where we were stuck. If you watch the game back, we were stuck. We had possession of the ball, but we were kind of at midfield essentially the entire game. And for me, Fonseca needs to be on the hot seat because this is unacceptable from an AC Milan perspective. To be here at this position, 0 wins, 3 games in with the people that they've played, it's simply unacceptable. Pioli would have gotten a result, regardless
That's
of
why
what you say. Like, no, but this is my issue when we talked about this. I was fine with Pioli leaving, but you brought in a guy that is essentially going to get you what Pioli
he's done
got you.
nothing. He's done
Yeah,
nothing. That's what I said to you 2, and I know Logan was more on Pioli out than you, but Pioli, you know what you were getting with Pioli.
yeah,
Fonseca has done nothing with anybody ever. Who is this guy? Like, what has he proven? Why'd you move on with him or to him?
yeah. And again, we're going to continue to say it. They are going to be talked about here every week until we see something that says Fonseca is the guy. And in modern game, you have a short leash. And I'm already getting worried about this because if there was something that we could point to say, I understand what you're doing, this is going to get better. But right now, there's nothing.
Nothing.
And to
But
flip
so
this over, Baroni's Lazio, I thought this was a good performance from them, particularly Ravella and Guendouzi were very, very good. They clearly have a style that they're trying to do. They essentially a whole game were in like a 4-4-2 in possession. They were kind of like that too. Nuno Tavares was an absolute monster off the left, overloading left side of the field, making 2v1s against Emerson or whoever it might be. But essentially what they were doing is they were trying to get the ball into Ravella in like kind of like weird situations where he would get it and then ping it very quickly through Milan's defense. And it went very, very well. And that's essentially what happens on the goals. It wasn't only Ravella that was playing the balls, but it was working well. It was causing a lot of problems. They were very secure on the ball. I thought defensively they looked good. They were unfortunate that the corner went in. Honestly, I thought Lazio deserved to win this game. And it's good to see guys firing. I called out Tati Castellanos. He scored another one here, and it was basically a tap in because Nuno Tavares put it on a silver platter. And then on the second goal, Dia netted one. He was on Salernitana last year, was kind
great
of
player.
needing
I
kind of
didn't know
needing a
Lazio got
goal.
him. Great player. I mean, that's what I'll add with what you mentioned on Lazio, and then move on to the next game is good partnership up top between
Mhm.
um, Castellanos and Dia. Those are good players. They both scored. They were both clinical. Good partnership. I didn't know Lazio got Dia. That's a great buy. He is a good player, knows the league. So good up top for Lazio. I do think that they could have or probably deserved the 3 points. But once again, if you play Liao from the start, I think you guys end up winning this because he's
Yeah, that
capable
could be true.
of doing those runs.
That could be true. And just the last point on Lazio, Matteo Zaccagni, I thought looked very good again. And this guy, if he was a little bit younger, would be getting a lot of looks from a lot of teams. He is a very scary player to play against. He was cooking the whole game down there. Every time he got
Yeah.
the ball, he turned Emerson at one point, like just
Magnificent.
gave him. It was ridiculous. He looked so good, and it's unfortunate that he didn't even get a goal. But Lazio was a lot better than I expected. Granted, Milan is a lot worse than I expected. So I don't know
Yeah, it's
what
also
is going to.
like it's not hard or just based off of the history of these 3 games, like anyone cooks Milan on that right hand side. So
Yeah,
yeah,
true.
he looked
Very
good.
true. But we'll see. I still think Lazio's ceiling is very low because of how Baroni sets up in that like 4-4-2. It doesn't get you far in the league as a whole, and I
Yeah,
don't think
agreed.
this
No,
product will
yeah,
happen against some better teams. But
Lazio's finishing 10.
moving it on here to Matz's Gumar. Napoli, a little bit of a scare.
Yeah, a little bit of a scare. It took them 91 minutes or so to finally score a goal to possibly draw. However, I will say from start to finish, this was a great game. I thought this was also, and I'm going to give a shout out to someone I normally don't. I don't remember the guy's name, but the referee who ref this game, I thought did a good job refing the game. I thought Parma's PK was a PK. He gave Napoli a PK, went to VAR, called it off, thought it was not a PK. He gave the Parma goalie a red card, which I thought was clearly a red card. He like fucking kicked David Neres in the nuts. I did think it was a smart play by the goalie. He had to go try to go win that ball, but on the follow through, just hit him in the nuts. Red card there. So I thought it was a great job, great officiated game, which you don't always see. So good job on the refs there. With that said, this is the type of game that Antonio Conte can take and just run with his players. It was 1-0. They were up a man. They couldn't find the net. They couldn't find the net. Subs on his man Lukaku. Guess who scores the one 30 minutes into his debut, scores a goal back in the Serie A. I know that they had a field player in net, so it wasn't like a true goalkeeper. However, it doesn't matter though. Lukaku blasted that through. You saw the second Lukaku came on, he was holding up play exactly like it was like he was still on Inter's Conte. He played great in the time that he did, and then they were you saw it after they scored in the 91st minute. They were all the Napoli players. They grabbed the ball, they sprinted, they wanted to go win the game, and that's Conte's DNA rubbing off on them. He's uniting them. They ended up getting that goal. Zombo got a great heading goal to win the game in like the 95th or
96, I think, right?
96th minute.
Yeah,
Yeah, I will
96.
say Meret saved them 3 points here because Parma had a shot within the 18-yard line that should have went in. It was a great save. I wouldn't have been shocked if Parma got the tie. I think they played well enough for the tie, and the red card on the goalie ultimately was the death of them and the reason why they dropped the full 3 points. But said it last episode, I'll say it again. Oh my goodness, Parma is going to be a tough win no matter who they play. They are a good team.
Yeah, I think that this is more the story. Like Parma is Parma's very good at this point. They're not fluke, and it's not like people are not prepared for them. They just have very good players all over the field, have a good manager, and they game plan well and they execute very well. Obviously, they scored on a penalty, but you still scored against a Napoli team that's maybe going to be the hardest team to score against in the league, from
Should
what
have
it looks like.
you should have tied. If Meret made a great save, or else it would have been 2-2. And I'll even add this: first half before the PK happened, Parma hit the post and the crossbar. Could have easily been 2-3 nothing going into halftime, and then you're probably saying they go into Naples, get all 3 points. But flip the big takeaway here is Napoli, Conte. This is going to just with now the Mercado closed. He got the players he wanted. The Osimhen saga's over. He can unite the guys. He can use this, propel them. They've already bounced back from their 3-0 defeat to Hellas Verona. They're in like third or fourth in the table right now. So, and you can see how passionate Conte is on the goals. You saw how united that team was when they scored that game-winning goal. They all did like this ginormous dog pile in the middle of the field. They're united. It's going. I'm telling you, one game a week, Conte. It's going to slowly come to fruition, and they're going to be there at the end of the season.
Yeah, for me, the story of this game is two things. One, we just highlighted Parma. There's nothing new in what they're trying to achieve. They're just very good at doing it, and everybody's going to struggle against them. And then number two is Lukaku. What was missing from this team, and it was so obvious, was that Raspadori and Simeone are not good enough to play in the system, and they actually make it worse, and they make it hard to create, and they make it hard to score. And Lukaku, 1 for 1. And what's to say he doesn't continue to do this and score 20 goals and Napoli's firing? I can't yet. We'll see. But it is a positive. And each week it's kind of been a better direction, better direction, better direction. If Parma get a draw to this game, we might be looking at it a little bit differently, but they didn't. And now they have a win. They're in fourth right now. So, I mean, it's good vibes, I guess.
It's great vibes. I told you, it's Conte. He knows the league. He knows what to do. Now he's got his man. He's got the guys that he wanted in the Mercado. Cavada's starting to find his form. Played another great game. I will say though, the one part, and once again, this is great why they got the two midfielders in Billy Gilmore and Scott. Napoli, even though we love Zombo, Labaka he can't cover ground,
Mhm.
and Zombo can only do so much running for two people. They are pretty open in the midfield and can get overran in the midfield. The PK that Parma got, I forgot who it was specifically on Parma that literally took the ball from the bottom of the half circle of the half field into Parma's 18-yard line directly through the middle of the pitch. Like nobody could get in front of him. And then there was a couple other times where Labaka was caught on the 18 and they very easily just passed it around him because he can't cover ground. But that's why they got in these two new midfielders more with in the squad competition. Maybe you can take Labaka out in the 60th, 70th minute to get those guys those fresh legs in so people can't or teams can't do that on them.
Yeah. I'm still going to be tuning into the Conte Napoli story. It's continuing to get more exciting, more intriguing, and we'll see how high they can finish because this could continue to roll. It could crash and burn at any point in time, and I have no idea which way it's going to go. But to move it on, Daniela De Rossi's Roma visited Turin and Thiago Motta's Juventus former Italian national team teammates battling it out in the worst game of the weekend. This
Yeah.
was a nil-nil from hell. I would have paid money to just have somebody tell me not to watch it because this game was absolutely terrible.
Yeah, it wasn't a fun game to watch. There was only I don't even think there was a lot of real chances. The XG was like 0.47 for Roma, 0.37 for Juve. There wasn't any like moments in the game where I was like, "Oh, like excited, like kind of perked up from my seat because of the chance." I'll break it down on a Juve aspect first and then go to Roma. Juve, a lot of new players that were in. Coop Miners had his debut, Sao had his debut. So they're probably still learning the system. This looked like a team that's only had their manager for 3 games. So, and that was bound to happen, obviously, because they've only had Thiago Motta for 3 games, right? So bound to happen to kind of come back down to earth and not put away 4 goals in a game. From a defensive standpoint, I loved what I saw out of
Mhm.
Juve. Gatti looked great. Bremer looked great. Cabal looked good. I
To
loved
be
what I saw.
fair, to be fair, Roma's offense is still very bad.
Yes, but I was gonna get to Roma there. I thought that they were much more balanced than they were against Empoli. Obviously, still trying to figure out the balance to their team, but they were a lot more balanced than before. But still, and then once again, going back to Juve in terms of a defensive standpoint, another game, another clean sheet. That's 3 goals, 3 games, 3 clean sheets. Bremer and Gatti are forming a very, very strong partnership as the two center backs, and then that young right back
Savona.
Savona playing very, very strong as well. This was his biggest. What's it called? Like
Test so far?
so, yeah, Roma
Yes.
exactly. So not the best game from Juve, but there's promising things to take out of it. And last thing I'll say before I flip it over to you is when Douglas Luiz comes in, he does not lose the ball.
Oh
He
my god, dude.
progresses the play. He is so good. Don't know why he hasn't played from the start yet. He was, oh my goodness, so good when he came in.
Yeah, from a Juve perspective, I this is yeah, it's your third game under a new manager, and they were going to at some point they were going to stumble a little bit. They were kind of ahead of where they should have been. Their XG is very low for having scored 6 goals. They're bottom 5 in the league. So, and this what happened essentially was Roma figured out their defensive shape, and they actually looked really good defensively. They were blocking off everything Juve was trying to do. Roma's issue is still that they can't create chances, and we saw that, and we'll get into that. From a Juve perspective, defensively, it's there. I thought Gatti, as with the armband too, this is your lock on. You don't need another center back. This is your pairing for 10 years. You're good. Like those two looked unbelievable. And I thought Savona was good enough. Like he didn't do a ton, but he does his job well. And Cabal is just getting better. I have nothing bad to say about him. Getting into the midfield, this is where I think the issue is. When you play Locatelli and Beans, Nicola Fajol, you kind of lose a guy that's willing to run into the box. And I think when Kefron Turam was in, And playing with Locatelli, that's what you did have. And I thought Beans and Locatelli played well, but they didn't have that creative spark that they needed. They needed like almost one more attacker to push
That
further
will
on.
come. That will come. I
Yeah,
mean, you
but I
play
don't
Coop
think that
Miners
this is
there.
I don't think this is the pairing that was my point. I don't think you can play both of them together and beat good teams.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, he's definitely gonna test out different types of midfields. I think when Coop Miners is in, he's gonna be the guy to make that run into the box, but I'm if it's not if it I wasn't overly impressed with these 2. I was much more impressed last game, but as you mentioned, this is a much better team in Roma. But yeah, I would have loved to see Douglas Luiz from the start here over one of these 2. I don't know why. Like I said, I don't know why he didn't. But I mean, time will tell with who the midfield's going to be. But Thuram's injured right now. I'm not worried about Juve's midfield because we have 6
Yeah.
very talented guys.
And when Coop Miners did come in, he looked like the best player on the field almost instantly and was already like commanding guys. Like he was moving the ball in a way that it's like, I am creating something that I want. And you could
Mhm.
see it happening so clearly. He was directing players on the field and it was working well. One more thing that I do want to highlight is when Juve had success progressing the ball, it was on like counterattacks down the flanks. And what
Conte
was
Sal played
happening is
well.
and Dusan was kind of having to chase a lot of those balls down, which he is not good at. That is my takeaway from this. So I could see Nico Gonzalez getting a little bit more time at striker than I had initially expected
That's what
because
I
I
thought.
think
That's
he
what I
could do
said.
that. Yeah, he did well when he came in. He didn't get a lot of service, but
Yeah.
he offers something that I think might work against some other teams. So from Juve, I think you're okay with this result with how the beginning of the season has gone. And again, you're integrating all these new players who are arguably your best players now from just a strictly technical
Hmm.
standpoint. So the ceiling is still extremely high. I don't know what it is yet, but I think they're expecting to win the league at this point.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then from the flip side, I think from a Roma perspective, based off the start you had you're not home this game, you were away in the Allianz, you'll also take this result, right? You would have liked to see more things offensively, especially with once again Dovbyk not doing amazing. Sule played a little bit better than last game. Dybala came in off the bench. So there were aspects that you would have as a Roma fan, you were probably like, I wanted to see more. But I think the more important thing to take away from this game is, as you mentioned, figured out their defensive shape. They've also got a new rotation piece to figure out their left side more. And they made a lot of changes this game. And one that I wanted to single out and talk about was Nicolo Pisili, I don't know how to
Patilli,
pronounce
yeah.
it. It's Pisili, 19 years old, got in the game, had a great game, I thought, against a team with Juve, against midfielders like Coop Miners, Locatelli, Fagioli, a 19-year-old in there, played 72 minutes, 27 of 29 successful passes, making a 93% pass accuracy, 2 key passes, 1 clearance, 1 interception. I think he played a great game. De Rossi was sending a message to Crisante, who I thought also played well, in Paredes. Like, listen, I'll play a young guy if you fucking go kick somebody in the box and give up a PK, Paredes. Like, I'm not afraid to play our young players, and he proved that he can play against these teams. So things to take away, some positives to take away from Roma. They're obviously not there yet. They still have some things to figure out, but you could see this was kind of a righting of the ship getting in the right direction game.
Yeah, and shout out to Rossi for recognizing how poor they've been defensively and saying, okay, we're playing Juve. Let's just figure that out. And that's basically what they did. They said, we're not going to concede. If we score, we can. Like, we'll take it. But the defensive shape is finally there. Everybody doesn't look like a chicken with their head cut off. They know what they're doing. Offensively, it's more the same. They're actually pretty good in possession and they move the ball really well. It's just getting the chance they can't create yet. They haven't showed that they can't. Part of that is they don't know how to use Dovbyk, and it's very clear. He basically just stands in the middle of the field and does nothing the entire game. And that's all that's happened so far. Granted, Dybala didn't start. I expect that to be a little different. But from what I'm seeing and what I've seen out of Pellegrini, they are fully relying on Dybala to just score goals. Like that is, they don't have any other strategy. When he comes on, he even shows that. He just gets the ball and tries to do stuff. So De Rossi has definitely righted the ship, and we're gonna stop conceding. Now it's in training. How do we create chances? So I would hope that we see that in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Otherwise, it's going to be a long season as a Roma fan. You're just going to see nil-nils.
They got so much talent up there that they have to figure it out. They definitely need to start getting more service into Dovbyk. You could see that, as you mentioned, tries to score, which obviously is good. He's a very good goal scorer. Sule tries to take on his man and score too much. It needs to have a balance of taking on my man, trying to score, but also trying to get in service to this guy who can score 30 goals in a season, which they just got to figure it out. As we mentioned, it's going to take a couple games. They're almost there. They got the defensive shape. Hopefully, they can continue that. Positives to take away, I would focus on the positives, and the offense. Their talent will get there. They will score goals this season.
Yeah, I agree. But that wraps up our reviews of this week. Just to take you through the other score lines very quickly. Torino went to Venezia and got 3 points, 1-0 win. I love this Torino team. I don't have enough good things to say about them. I'm tuning into the story every week. They're tactically great. All their players are flying. Absolutely love everything I'm seeing there. Empoli went to Bologna and got a point out of that draw. This is such an Vincenzo Italiano team. It's not even funny. They need to find a goal scorer though, because it's just ball possession with no goals, and it's already kind of why people got sick of watching Fiorentina in the league, because that's all they do, and it turns out to be a boring game a lot of the time.
With the Mercado closed, who knows if they're going to find it? They have to get someone with the in-house now to score their goals.
Yeah,
Just Italiano to the T. But they did score like 2 minutes in, and then Empoli scored the next
yeah.
minute. So got to
From an
figure that.
Empoli perspective, great start to the season. We were very out on them, and they've done
Mhm.
well. Cagliari went to Lecce, lost that game 1-0. I was very disappointed in Cagliari's performance. I loved how they had started to the season. Thought they would kick on from that. This was a Colpi leg. We thought it was a lock. Was not. From a Lecce perspective, needed the win. Good for them.
You got it. You got to get at least 1 point when you are up a man for a whole entire half.
Yeah, have to. You absolutely have to, and that's poor management. Verona continuing to roll. They beat Genoa 2-0, and this is a good Genoa team that we thought this was going to be a good game. I think Verona and Torino for me are the two teams that are looking like they could break into a European spot if they keep rolling like this. And I don't think it would be that crazy. I think they look a lot better than some of our traditional top six.
Yeah, like Lazio. I agree. I think a team that we're about to say in a couple also we can put them in as well. But I'll let them know when we
Is it
get
the next one?
No, it's 2 from now.
Two for now. Okay.
Yeah.
Monza, Fiorentina. This was a good game, 2-2. Daniel Maldini, one of Logan's least favorite players, actually hit an absolute banger. So it's good to see these kind of mid-table teams hitting a level. It's just exciting to see goals going. We had a couple slow games. And then lastly,
Well,
Como.
real quick, Moise Kean, Fiorentina scored 2 games in a row now, so starting to find his form. Went all of last season without scoring. Fiorentina off to a rough start though.
Yeah.
Them and Bologna, the two guys that swapped coaches. Well, Monza actually, but they've been off to a tough start that we thought they were going to come off to a better start.
Yeah. And then to wrap it up here, Como lost at Udinese. Right now, nothing going right for Como.
Udinese is who I was talking about when you were mentioning Verona, also off to a good start. They've had less of a test than Verona have in terms of who they played, but they beat Lazio. They got their business done at Como. They're right now sitting in 4th and 7th. It's Torino, Udinese, and Verona at 3, 4, 5, and those are the 3 teams that we kind of think maybe they'll have a shot in that 7 to 9, 7 to 10 range this season. But we'll
Yeah,
see how it
they're
shapes up.
playing some beautiful, beautiful football. But to wrap up here, guys, we got our players of the week. You want to do this? Because I know you got a fantasy football draft that's
Yeah, I
coming
got to
up.
draft in 1 minute here, boys, but I got to pull it up on my phone. But my player of the week, a different shout today, Sol Coro from Torino. He brought in to replace Bongiorno. Pretty big shoes to fill, but as I mentioned in the preview, Torino typically are okay selling defenders because they know what they have to replace. They did it with Bremer. They replaced Bremer with Bongiorno. They now sold Bongiorno. They're replacing Bongiorno with Sol Coro. Center back scored the game-winning goal. Has been just a rock back there. They're giving up a little bit more than last year, but no, like people were worried that Torino might not be able to kind of finish in their normal 9-10 spot because of Bongiorno leaving and how big of a hole he was going to need to, or how big of a hole he was going to leave. And he's filled in the hole seamlessly. Had a great game. Excited to see what else he can do this season.
Love the shout. For me, it had to be Marcus Thuram. He should have had a hat trick. They did not give him one of the goals. They gave it an own goal. This is a guy that has come in off of a bad Euros performance under Lautaro Martinez. Lautaro's not having a great start to the season. What happens? Marcus Thuram just absolutely banging in goals, keeping Inter rolling. And I expect this to just keep happening this year because nobody's going to be able to stop what Inter are doing. And Marcus Thuram, early shout for me for Golden Boot.
Yeah, Taram. I think, in my opinion, there's only one person in better form than Taram this right now in the world, and it's Holland, and then it's Taram.
Wow, that's a good shout. I love that. But with that, guys, we are done. Over the course of the next 2 weeks, we're just going to be giving you some different things with the international break going on. We'll be talking Italy. We'll be talking power rankings, a whole bunch of interesting stuff for you guys. But with that, we are done. As always, follow us on all of our socials at Calcio Culture FC. And Mott's, take us away here before you hop for your fantasy football draft.
Paisanos, don't be a gagoots, and Forza Calcio Culture.